Great. Well, it's so nice to see all of you virtually. I am Katie Hale, and I am so happy to be back working with the Melton Fellows. I had such a great honor last year being at the GCC in Chile, so I feel so lucky to be asked to come back to work with all of you. So I am the Global Advocate Program Manager at Mama Hope. I train our fellows as they start their journey with Mama Hope, and from fundraising to human-centered design, Stop the Pity, which we'll talk about today, project management, and then cross-cultural immersion that really helps to prepare them to go and live and work in East Africa, Ghana, Guatemala, India, and communities in the United States. So some things we'll cover today. I'll just give you a brief overview of Mama Hope and the work that we do. There are quite a few parallels between Mama Hope and the Melton Foundation, which I'm sure you'll be able to draw. We'll talk about Mama Hope's sort of prosperity mindset idea, and then we'll really get into Stop the Pity. They all kind of go very well together, and then I hope by the end of this you'll have, a list of ways to really prepare you for your trip in Ghana, and then also the way that you'll interact with the locals and the communities that you'll be working with during your week in Accra. So, and then obviously a Q&A. So just a brief overview of Mama Hope. This is actually our manifesto, which is, really kind of the core of our organization and the foundation and the way that we really operate from as a staff, as our fellows, our donors, and the communities and the partners which we work with around the globe. What we do is we partner with community-based organizations and NGOs around the world. What we do is we identify local leaders who we believe have an immense amount of talent and knowledge and expertise in their areas of healthcare, education, food security, women's empowerment, clean water sanitation, and financial and environmental sustainability. And so what we do is we partner with them on their projects, and we transfer the resources they need to really be fully self-sufficient without any international aid within 3 to 5 years. If you can see from our manifesto, we really look for what we think is like the brilliance within these communities rather than sort of what they're missing. And we focus on what's already there and ways that they can build upon that. We also really work from an idea that we're all very equal and that working within partnership is what really makes the development sphere thrive. So it's all about collaboration and working kind of at eye level rather than like top down. So that's the way we work. And one thing that we've really honed in on the last few years, and I think you'll really notice this when you're working with the organizations that you'll be partnered with in Ghana, is this idea of a prosperity mindset. So it's all from going about how we want to transition the language when working with developing communities or leaner communities, that we're not surviving, but we're actually trying to thrive. This photo was illustrated by a teacher in one of the communities we work with in rural Tanzania. And it has the school, which you can see in the left corner, which is the education center, about how every time we invest in one thing in a community at the very local level, when it's decentralized from, larger governments and different entities, that it really has the potential to really trickle down and to reach everybody in a community. And that way, not just one person is thriving, but the whole community can then thrive. So, so you can see this with the schools we work in, or, for example, we've partnered with different schools who then, invest in sustainable farms through their communities where the mothers of the students can come and work on the farms and then use the money that they make and sell that in different markets and then feed, their homes. So it really has the ability to trickle down. And this is the way that we really see development working is, investing in different groups at the very local level in very holistic ways, and then letting that go and spread throughout entire communities. Another thing that really keeps Mama Hope moving, and I think is really the way that we work with the people that we partner with, is our Stop the Pity movement. This is our media and marketing movement. We have created about 5 or 6 videos now that have been viewed by over 1 million people across the globe. And these stories just really captivate our partners around the globe. So it is our media arm, and it's a way that when we partner with organizations and media companies and our fellows, it's really something we expect for them to really uphold. It's a huge value system for us, and it's just a huge part of everything that we do. And it's really sort of the driving voice and piece of our organization. It really brings voice to our communities and what we think is really authentic and true to who they are, rather than sort of the stereotypes that have been created about these leaner developing communities across the globe. So just a background of Stop the Pity. It started actually in 2009 when our founder, Nyla Rogers, went to Tanzania to work with one of our partners at the St. Timothy's School. She was with another organization who was there filming the school. And one of the children that was there, his name is Alex, he was leaning up against a fence, just chatting and having a great time. And when Nyla got back to the United States, she realized that this organization had actually put Alex up on their ads as being a child who was hungry, without education, and who was sick and just not the person that he was in any way. So Nyla immediately called this organization and she was like, you have to take that down. That's absolutely not true of who Alex is. Alex is a thriving young boy who speaks different languages. His father is very involved in the community. He's a great student. What if Alex were to see this someday? It would be very, very insulting to him and, not give him the confidence that he needs. So they were creating, or perpetuating a stereotype about children in Africa that really isn't always true. So the next year, I hope you guys are able to see the video. We made the Stop the Pity video, which is called Alex Presents Commando, which is Alex talking about Commando, which is from Arnold Schwarzenegger. When he went back, he was like, oh, you're from California, Nyla. I actually love Arnold Schwarzenegger, who I think is your governor. And he just started getting into this really elaborate story about the movie, and they filmed it, and it just really showed Alex for who he truly was. It was just a young boy who's very curious and silly, likes movies and likes friends, and just really the talented person that he is. And so that's how Stop the Pity was born. It's like we want to show the communities that we work with for who they are, and we don't want them to live up to the stereotypes that really have been created by people in the West about these communities. They're not always true. And while there is poverty and there is a certain amount of lack, there's so much innovation and love and heart and collaboration. And, everyone there works in many of the same ways that we do. And so it's really all about just breaking down those stereotypes and that kind of Western narrative about, Africa as a continent, and looking past that and bringing the vibrancy and life that's really there in those communities. So does anyone have any questions so far? Okay, great. And so I wanted to get more into Stop the Pity and kind of how you guys can use this when you are in Ghana and any community that you work with across the globe. I know as Melton Fellows, you have the privilege to really work in many different places around the world. And so this translates no matter where you are, across the globe. And so one thing we wanted to talk about is, how do you identify what we call is, poverty porn? What we think it is when you tell stories. Like, stories are a communal currency of humanity, and that's something that we always look at. We believe that that's what makes communities and cultures wealthy, are their stories and the honest truth behind them. And part of this goes into marketing. It's, marketing is no longer about the stuff that you make, but about the stories you tell. And you will all have the opportunity to do that when you're in Ghana, is coming back and telling those really great stories of ingenuity and innovation that you'll see with organizations that you work with. But be able to tell, to be able to tell a good story, you first have to be able to identify the bad ones, right? You can't just, it kind of sometimes takes a trained eye. And I know that when I was a fellow, I had no idea what this really meant. I remember living in Thailand and, taking pictures and telling stories that, very much were not in alignment with Stop the Pity. So it can take a trained eye, but it's really easy and fun once you kind of get the hang of it. So I'm excited to jump into that. So what is poverty porn? Does anyone have an idea, or have you heard the term before? Sorry, I can't actually see everybody.
If you want, you can type in the chat window or just unmute yourselves.
It's kind of become quite the, I think, buzzword in, social media and media that's for kind of development.
If no one else, please.
Yeah.
I think it has to do with selling this idea and showing images and videos that show extreme poverty, and has to make you feel really bad about yourself, and make you feel like it looks the idea, it looks that you feel bad and you want to do charity, but only give the money away and It's like you have to help, but in this certain way, because they're showing you these horrible images of, I don't know, children starving and suffering, but it doesn't really give you the opportunity to develop the community, just to give money away, something like that.
Well, does anyone have any other things they want to add to that?
I think I would add that, I think a lot of times that poverty porn is directed at people in, industrialized countries. And I kind of interpret it as also telling, letting people sort of say to themselves, the people seeing it, as we're superior to them, or in that pity comes a certain value judgment about the people in the images and oneself. And I find that also really destructive and incorrect and unfair. So that's another aspect of it. I think.
Well, I think both of you really hit the nail on the head. Two things is, I think who spoke first? Vale? It absolutely is a way of, giving charity rather than investment, right? It makes you feel really guilty. And it makes you want to, you just blindly write a check. You may not know where it goes. It really guilts you into being sort of a donor. And then also, Winthrop, what you said is the positionality of it. It gives the people who are creating this media a sense of, superiority, where it's still positioning these other communities as inferior and kind of helpless. And it is very, very destructive, right? It's not allowing us to see the progress that really is being made in the world. So both of you really hit it on the nail on the head. And this is how we, this is how we define it, as just depicting the graphic qualities of a vulnerable human being or community for the sole purpose of eliciting an emotional experience. And that emotional experience can be the positioning yourself to be above these people, or, the emotional experience of feeling guilty for what you have and wanting to share it in a way that is not really sustainable. So you guys really hit the nail on that head. Awesome. And so did everyone have a chance to watch some of the videos that I sent? I hope that you had a chance to watch the Christian Children's Fund one. I know I'm almost 31 years old, and I remember seeing those videos growing up all of the time. They were oftentimes on after Saturday Night Live and times where everybody would be watching TV. However, the one that I sent you was actually made in 2014, which to me is really alarming, that we're reinventing these videos rather than, making them better and doing justice. And so I hope that everyone had a chance to watch them. And maybe for those of you that did have a chance to watch that, you can help the fellows who didn't within this section. I'd love to hear what everyone thinks from watching that video, or any other experience you have seeing media and marketing like that what elements do you think make up poverty porn? And I know that Winthrop and Vale both did bring up some concepts within what they said. So if anyone wants to add to any of that, what elements make up poverty porn? If you can think about that video.
If you're too shy to unmute yourselves, please feel free to type.
And if you want to show any of your faces, that would be nice too. But you don't have to.
So something I found interesting in the video about Maria, that it was that nobody else can help her, not even herself or her parents, but only the donors from outside.
That's a huge part of it. And I think kind of what Winthrop was saying as destructive is, you do think that only these Western ideas or these bulletproof fixes coming from larger donors can be what helps these communities, which is really absolutely not true. Most communities are creating and developing on their own. We just don't really get to see it. Awesome. That's a great example. Any other ones? I know one thing that always strikes me is in these sort of poverty porn videos is, did anyone ever hear Maria say anything? She is completely voiceless. There is nothing from her at all. It's just her being objectified, or kind of being this object rather than this active participant, which always really, really strikes me. And that's something I think to look for in media. And when you're in Ghana is really, letting the community tell the stories, let them be at the forefront of what you're doing. When you're taking pictures, let it be of them and the work they're doing, maybe not even the work that you're doing. We always try and set ourselves back and let the community showcase, what they're doing and to tell their stories and, what they believe in, what they want for themselves and for their communities. Yeah. Any other takeaways? Or any other elements you can think of?
I thought you said objectifying, and I guess I would take it maybe even a step further, sort of dehumanizing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
So that you really can't connect. You're connecting through that pity. It's not a, again, it's, I think creating this hierarchy. Also through kind of not having them able to tell their story or show positive aspects of
Definitely. Yeah. Any other ones before I show you kind of the long list of characteristics? But I'd love to hear from each of you, or some of you, if you'd like to share.
Oh, I think that there is also the fact that all the ambientation and everything around her is really sad. Everything moves you and try to get you to feel to pity her, to feel sorry for her, and take the dollar off. So you can help her in that only way, but it doesn't show you any other. And it's that everything is really sad about the video, from the music to the child crying at the end.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's interesting to me, as I'm sure every community in the world has probably a trash site, like you could tape that anywhere in the world. Maybe not even from her community, So that's true. Any other last ones before I give you the list? These are all really great, or are all spot on. Not great characteristics, spot on. Cool. Well, I will just give you some of the other things that we've noticed that really, make up what we call poverty porn. Well, I may have forgot that slide, so I'll just kind of run through them. I think it's, like you said, instilling guilt and sadness and shame. There's really this, again, like Winthrop has said, this us versus them. There's the helplessness. It's a one-dimensional story. And the only person speaking is the man. It's his vision, not the community's vision at all. And that, if you notice at the end, the girl looks really happy, but that's after they talk about the charity coming in, that these people in these communities can only be happy if they're charity. There's the Western savior complex. There's no context. We don't really know where this is. We don't know where she's from. It's very staged. The lighting and everything, like you said, is sad, in the music. And they also use like downward camera angles. And it's, again, those are just some characteristics. A lot of times you'll see the like pot bellies and skinny little children, just in destructed communities. So those are just some of the things to look for and to make sure that you don't photograph when you're, in Ghana. So yeah. And did anyone have a chance to watch the Charity Water video? The one with Jim and the Ayunga people? No? Well, so if you have time to watch that when you're done, that would be great, because the thing is about poverty porn and kind of this wanting to stop the pity is there's really a fine line between what is poverty porn and how it comes off. The one that you'll see, the Jim's video, it's actually a really very beautiful video. The music is amazing and the cinematography is so brilliant, but it really still is poverty porn because there's no voice in it. and it's only Jim's vision, and the people never have a chance to talk about what
That's
they
the
want.
charity water thing, right?
Yeah, the charity water. Sorry, yes, the charity water video.
Okay.
And so it's really hard to notice. I know when I first saw it, I was like, oh, this video is brilliant. I would donate in a heartbeat to this organization. And then I thought about it more, and it really is still one-sided, a Western savior complex, and very voiceless, and asking just for simple donations based off of this one group. And it doesn't show any sort of innovation happening in that community. So we kind of call this like poverty porn and skinny jeans. It's like, it looks cool, but it's still poverty porn. So you'll hear us say that quite a bit. So it's like poverty porn and skinny jeans. So, and then just to go off that, I guess, we've talked about this before. I'd love to hear from each of you. Why do you think poverty porn is so problematic? And I think Winthrop did touch on this as well, is that it is destructive. Is there any other reasons anyone thinks that it might be problematic?
There's one comment in the chat window.
Yeah,
Okay. Do you want to read it out, or I can also read it out?
Oh, I can read it. So is this from Destiny?
Yes.
Yes. So yes, the video about irrigation systems. I agree with your point too. I never really did hear from the actual people what the story was about, which goes back to your point on stereotypes and telling an authentic story. Yeah, absolutely. And it is hard to identify, and don't feel guilty when you can't identify that. It does take a trained eye, but I would have loved to have heard from that, the Awaka people that he was talking to, and understanding what they want and what they're already doing in the community, rather than just Jim, who's been living there for years but isn't from that community.
And there's also another comment from Tito saying, first, for us in Africa, it is stereotypical and shaming.
Yeah. So one reason it is so dangerous, it truly perpetuates every stereotype that's already been created about the continent of Africa and the countries and the local communities that you'll be working with. It is very shameful. You're absolutely right. Any other ones? That's a great one, Tito, and on my list, actually.
Ketsia is saying poverty porn empowers the wrong person.
Snaps to that. Absolutely. It gives the agency to, us as the people coming into these communities, right? That's absolutely spot on.
Savello is saying it shifts the attention from the problem.
Yes, exactly. I think so many times working with, really grassroots communities is they're very decentralized, and they're doing amazing work without needing to be a part of like the government and different, larger entities. And it really, the bigger problems are so big, right? It does take away from what's actually going on there, which are, the things that the communities you'll be working with are trying to address. And that's what you should be focusing on, is what are these interventions that are coming from within these communities? It's really important. So, any other ones? You guys are doing so well at this. Yeah. Awesome. And so these are just, who and what poverty porn affects. The subjects, obviously, like you said, it empowers the wrong people. It's not lifting them up and, enabling them for success and to get out of these stereotypes. How about the viewers, right? Again, you guys said it guilts, it shames, it makes you, it perpetuates this kind of Western savior complex. And I think humanity as a whole, like if we can't get past these stereotypes, how can we ever really move forward? And I also think our generation specifically, I look at each of you and our fellows and the work that's being done, where I think poverty porn really sticks us in the past in the way that international aid and development used to be done. And it's really changing quite a bit. And I think our generation wants to move forward, but when we keep recreating these things, we'll never be able to. Also, our generation in Africa is extremely innovative, and it's a very young continent. And it's going to be this generation that really, I think, moves each nation forward in really huge ways. And I think that that's something really important to look at when you are in Ghana. And then how about the content and the producers? It allows them to put themselves on this higher position and this pedestal, and doesn't really help them connect with communities in a really authentic and beautiful way, you know. And I think in the end, it really impacts everyone's ability to create true change in this world. So does anyone have any other things they'd want to add to that? Yeah.
There's one comment from Andrea saying, don't know if someone said this, my connection got lost for a bit, but I feel like they focus the attention and opinions on their own work instead of in the problem and the community that needs help.
Exactly. Yep. And that's why you really have to find those authentic stories and let the communities tell them, because I think we've noticed, and Mama Hope has made this mistake before, we are by no means a perfect organization. In the beginning, you know, sometimes we didn't always listen to what the communities wanted, and it just was very, at times, donor driven, and for us to reach certain numbers and to get more donations. Like, poverty porn definitely sells, you know, it does help guilt people into things, but that's not who we want to be. And we would never use that, but it really can, it can really make you promote your agenda rather than the one that really is at the core of the work and the one that needs, you know, the support. And it also, you know, for that, it also kind of pumps our egos in a way as donors and as development workers. It makes us feel like we have the answers and that, you know, we can help these communities and save them, which really they're saving themselves, if anything. So awesome. Any other ones? Cool. Great. And so I guess if you had a chance to watch some of the Stop the Video videos that I gave you, you'll notice some of the ways that it is different. Our partners are always at the forefront and are always telling the story. We always do it in their environment and always try and catch them and tell the story for who they are. We always say, like, no one wants a picture taken of them on a bad day. Like, I know we all probably freak out when people put a picture when we don't look our best on social media. It goes the same way. You know, you never want to take a picture and share it when it's not at your best. It's just not fair to anyone. So at the end, I'll have you guys kind of go over ways that it's different in your assignment for this. So we'll skip this just in the essence of time. So I want to talk about how it can shift stories and like success for organizations too. This is how we do it as an organization and as a school in Tanzania. We provide food, healthcare, education, and employment. That's what we have. Those are our assets. And every person has the ability to make change in the world, including these children, even from a community that might not have, you know, everything. So yeah, so these are ways that you can do it differently. I think look at these two photos and think about ways that you can market your stories, you know, after you are in Ghana and anywhere that you're working around the globe. This is another place. This is from our partners in Rwanda. These are actually genocide survivors. And I think our partner there could really take on the narrative of the genocide and the grief and the struggle that's happening in Rwanda, but instead she's showing and wanting to portray the resilience of this rather than the tragedy. So you can see just catching the community and the light and the love that they really are in and showing them for who they are. Anyone in the world can connect to these photos, right? Everyone has love and a family that they want to connect to, right? So to me, this is so powerful because I think the narrative is so tragic from genocide, but choosing not to focus on that will really help these communities move forward. You know, having to relive that through media and marketing for these communities would be so destructive for their healing, right? So to me, these are just like some really good examples of kind of what not to do or how to do it. Awesome. So I think you guys might not be doing a lot of marketing at all, but I think you will have stories to tell after your travels to Ghana, and especially about the communities that you're working with. I know you'll be really inspired by the work that they're doing at those organizations. So these are just some guidelines of how to stay away from, you know, pity marketing. It's treat people as active participants, not as objects. Let them tell the stories. You know, everyone has a voice. Commit to amplifying it. You guys are in an incredible position because you have the ability to get these stories and then to retell them in an authentic way. So use it as a privilege, you know, to be able to share these stories, you know, in the trueness and the beauty that they are. I think the biggest thing, I almost feel like it should be number one, is refuse to reinforce any stereotypes, positive or negative. Make your own observations based on what you're allowed to see. I've never been to certain places in Ghana. I should never have an assumption of what that community is like before actually going there. So I think really committing to number three is really, really important. Ask questions. If you don't know something about this community and you really want to, best have a conversation. It will create connection and collaboration and partnership. So just ask those questions. Sorry, I have to move my thing. I can't see. Also, don't embrace the top-down narrative. Get away from it. It's no longer needs to be about the West. It needs to be, again, about that partnership. Take on their narrative and that local context. So don't embrace the top-down narrative. Really change it. Also, show progress and potential. That's what really is so amazing to see, is these communities, and the way they're thriving, the way they're innovating. That's what people will grab onto, especially people, I think, who are our age, and then kind of this newer generation of what we want social impact to look like. So, and remember, each of you have a choice in this. You can tell these negative, stereotypical stories, or you can tell the really beautiful, inspiring ones. So remember, it is a choice and you have it. But I hope you make the choice to tell the potential ones. So awesome. And then these are, I think, some action steps for you guys to do now, and then before you leave, and then while you're actually in Ghana. I would really recommend to be informed. So when you get there, you understand Ghana a little bit more as a country and what it's been through and its history and where it's at now. Be informed. I don't think many people know that Ghana is actually considered a middle-class country now. You think of Africa and you probably think of it as being a leaner, developing nation, where actually it's not, So be informed and find out ways that you can really get past those stereotypes that have been entrenched in you. But I think going further than, the national country history is really understand the local context and its position in Ghana as a nation. Because I think what you'll find in Africa that's so beautiful to me is these local communities are each very, very different. And the way that they're developing and making progress is so holistic and unique to who they are. So really ask questions and go and search and really just observe a lot so you understand their place in this wider global or national and global context. And this one is one of my favorites. It's called Kanju, which is basically creativity or resourcefulness born from African difficulty. So you'll notice all over, I think, East Africa, I've seen it in India and Asia, is the innovation that you wouldn't really think of as innovation because it's maybe not an iPhone or an Apple computer or a great app. It's done in many other ways. Nairobi started the living walls and that movement. There are apps in Ghana that are for farmers to report drought in certain areas so farmers know not to harvest there. There's so many things of innovation that are called Kanju. If you're walking down the streets in Accra, you'll see people are selling things to cars. That's an incredible way to make money. They're not peddling, they're just finding ways to broaden their economy. So really look for those things. It's really unique to each sort of community, and it's also really cool. I've seen incredible things made that I would never know, but people make them out of their difficulties. But again, that's not poverty, that's just progress, I think, And another thing is focus on assets. It's really easy to go into a community and to look at the lack and what they don't have, right? But they have a lot. And it's really important to look at that because that's what communities are building upon. And that's where progress can happen, is when you build upon what you have. So don't go in and think, oh, they don't have, Western style toilets. They have outhouses. Well, those outhouses might have composting systems that then they use and put them into farms. That's an incredible asset, right? Or maybe they don't have light switches, but they have solar. Solar is an incredible innovation. So really focus on assets. And then I think understand dynamics too. What you'll notice in these communities is everyone has a place, and everyone really, if you get past kind of what these governments have done to these communities and what they're not doing, these communities are making up for it on a very local level. So if you can understand the dynamics in that community, get to know the local leaders and the heads of these organizations you'll be working with, talk to your Ghanaian fellows and see how they're involved in their communities and what those dynamics are, because that will really help you get past, I think, these stereotypes. And then embrace diversity. It's, you know, some of the nations I've been to in Africa are the most unique and beautiful nations or places I've ever been. And for how different they are, to me, just makes them so much more beautiful because they're so diverse and colorful and have very unique innovation and things in their countries that you're not seeing anywhere else. And then I think obviously you're doing this now, but just learn, be there to learn and observe. You don't have all the answers, and thinking that you do perpetuates those stereotypes. So just be there to learn from the people who live there and the work that they're actually doing. So that's all I have besides this assignment. I don't know if anyone has any questions at the very end of this. I know that's a lot for just 30 minutes, and I hope I didn't lose anyone.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, everyone can think about what they want to ask and write them down in the chat window or unmute yourselves. I have the question of, like, do you have like a recipe or something to constantly check yourself, like if you are contributing to a stereotype, or how to avoid that?
Yeah, well, I think we always tell our fellows this, and I know you won't have that amount of time in Ghana, but when you are first visiting somewhere, you shouldn't really go in like guns blazing and snapping pictures of everyone and what they're doing. So always be the observer, you know, take a step back. I think that that's really important. Let yourself learn. Ask if you can take a picture of people. Another thing I think that's really important too is sometimes in the moments when I'm feeling the most uncomfortable in a country for, you know, the cultural differences or just because it's so different, that's when the stereotypes can come in. So check yourself when you're feeling kind of uncomfortable and that vulnerable feeling when you visit a new place. Maybe that's not a time for you to like take a picture or tell a story of someone, because that's when the stereotypes come in, because you'll notice how different things are in those moments. Like for me, like it never always goes away. There are times I've been to East Africa now. I'll be going on my 5th trip there. And every time it's different. And there are times when I'm tired and exhausted and I miss the comforts of home. And I can tell at those times, like I am feeling vulnerable. And if I were to kind of try and be active and engaging with people, it probably would perpetuate those stereotypes because I'm feeling that way. I think that that can help you really figure things out, is just understanding that it's okay, one, to feel sometimes, you know, the vulnerability of visiting a new place and how uncomfortable it can be at times. And knowing that when you are feeling that way, maybe it's time to take a step back. We say get on the balcony at that time, you know, just be an observer and look out rather than being an active participant. And also just, I think conversations too. Ask people, you know, what they want people to know about them. You know, like if you saw our Hollywood men stereotype video, that video came from them asking like, what would you want people to know about you in the US? And they said, we want them to know that we're not like warlords. We don't have guns, you know, like we are doctors and students and we're very normal people. So just ask questions. I think that's like the biggest. If you don't know and you want to do something, always ask. I think that's the biggest thing too. Anyone else? Yes, Linton.
You're mute. I will read. Meanwhile, the question of Savello. Savello says,
yes.
In Africa, I've noticed how sometimes the stereotypes can be applied to people who are visiting. For example, a kid in a village would ask a visitor for money or help. How does one react in such a situation?
That is such a good question, and we get that a lot. And you're right, stereotypes do go both ways. I think it's finding a way to break that. I never, ever hand things out. And if I do want to hand something out, I give it to that community leader that I'm working with, and I let them hand it out. That's a really good way to do it. If there's gifts you want to take to the communities you'll be working with, they should never come directly from you. They should come from that teacher or that project manager or the founder of that organization. They can hand it out on your behalf, and I'm sure they'll say, this is a gift from this person, but it's still coming from that community, if that makes sense. That's something really, really good to do. And always also just saying like, no, I don't have one. Sorry. I'm empty handed. You know, I always get a lot of, when I was a fellow for Mama Hope, I would get asked a lot for money and like tuition from people. And it would be hard sometimes to make those friendships, but what people didn't know, and I would also just like flip it, like, I have no money either. Like, I'm a volunteer who just graduated from college. I have no money, you know, like Mama Hope has allowed me to be here, but I have really nothing to share. I'm also, I think, struggling as well financially, you know, like I have to figure out how to pay my student loans when I get back from here. So I think trying to find that common ground can be very helpful in letting people know that like there are more similarities than there are differences, you know? So if you're talking to someone who's your age in Ghana, you'll likely find that the same things. Work is hard, school's hard, money's a problem. You can't find a girlfriend or a boyfriend. We're all very very similar. Yeah, that's a really great question. And will probably happen to you. I would recommend though not, yeah, again, just not doing those handouts. I think that that's really important. Winthrop, did you want to ask your question?
A couple things. On that point about sort of the stereotypes cutting both ways, one thing I've also observed is, in addition to sort of the handout issue, is it's been so reinforced through a lot of these things, including the you know, the poverty porn, that sort of the white outsider coming in is the one with the expertise and all this powerful education, and the inverse is kind of, well, the person in the village kind of knows nothing, quote unquote. And what I've experienced too is that often that bias is projected onto me, and that, you know, I'm the expert. So being really, I think I find it, you have to be kind of really mindful and purposeful about asking a lot of questions and bringing people, you know, that humility, I guess you would call it, and being careful not to pontificate or sort of, oh, I'm so eager to share what I know, and just be much more in listening mode. And then I find that over time that changes the conversation and the dynamic to that more kind of equal way that you're talking about. So, you know, sometimes what people are not asking you or not saying to you, that, you know, is also something we need to listen to as outsiders.
Yeah, that is such a good point. I think you'll get that a lot. Like, international aid has been done very poorly in the past, where it has been, you know, completely from the West and these white savior complexes and ideas. And, you know, you'll notice that the people in these organizations that you'll be visiting, they are beyond experts in what they're doing, and they have incredible solutions and innovation. So that is a great point. Like, I think what I said earlier is really understanding these dynamics in these communities and letting them always take the lead. You know, I know anytime I've ever been with one of our partners and someone's been visiting or they're showing something, I'm always just kind of in the background and letting everyone know that, like, this is completely their idea and I'm only there to be a small part of the big picture. Right.
And the other thing, I guess it's both, maybe it's almost more a question for the fellows on the call, is, you know, we're really diverse. And so, you know, most fellows don't look like you or me, Katie, right?
Which is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, right. And we're coming from, let's say, those of us who are not African, but, you know, African American or from China or India or Chile. My question is, these biases about, these preconceived notions about, it's not just Western, but I get the sense that it's also Africa, you know, Africa, quote unquote, evokes this kind of stereotype, even in other developing countries, you know, whether it's in Asia or, you know, in like Chile. So I just wonder whether, you know, we're talking about kind of a Western African sort of dichotomy, but I also wonder whether those biases, if like the Chileans feel that, you know, the kind of things that comments their families or friends are saying about their trip to Ghana, or maybe, I don't think there's anyone on the call from China, but from China, or even, you know, whether the same kinds of stereotypes and expectations exist, or whether it's a little different.
I would actually love to hear this as well, because I have experienced it or seen it, but I would love to hear from each of you on this.
So this goes to you, Vale, Sanchita, Joaquin, Destiny, Connie, Andrea, but everyone else who wants to come.
Yeah, I can go first. I think that the stereotypes that we have in Chile, at least, are really similar from the ones in the United States or in other parts of the world. Is all about the poverty and how they need our help and how we can make the difference there, but not in a real way. Just it's like you go there, you help them, or you give them money and help them, but you don't give them the tools to develop themselves. So there is this really fragile image of how Africa is and how poor it is and how we have to help them, but never how we can help them help themselves. How can we give them the tools to drill and do better on their own? So I think it's pretty much like everywhere else.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of the stereotypes are just like the handouts rather than let's teach someone to fish, not just like give them fish, you know?
I would like to know, to be honest, from Kezia and from Sabelo and Tito and I don't know who else is I can find on the call, because I also think sometimes that there's also like a difference between like within Africa and like that the same stereotypes exist between village people and city people or specific nations. So maybe there's also a similar dynamic. So don't feel forced to answer, but maybe this is something we could take also into consideration. Oh, Destiny is writing a lot. Woo. She's saying, yes, I agree with the earlier comments from Winthrop and Katie as well. When I watched the video entitled African Men, Hollywood Stereotypes, it really does showcase that we all must really be mindful about our thinking and stereotypes of others and the stereotypes of the media and various communities at large. It teaches us to work more from a place of community and teamwork versus going into other places and thinking we as outsiders or non-locals have all the answers, when teamwork from within the community and maybe from others is also a key to bettering the community as well as showcasing these authentic narratives.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, hi. So in response to like the question which you asked, Yuli, what I would say is such that the stereotype it occurs within Africa itself and within like different communities between urban and village people. It's most probably brought about by like a perceived difference in lifestyles. To say you appear to have a better lifestyle or a better upbringing than I do, so most probably you have more than I have. So that's kind of how it plays out a lot. And then within the community which you'll be working at, I'm sure you even noticed it when you did like the campus visit that they perceive like us college kids as being more wealthy than like the village that's close by. So you get that a lot to say, can you help me out with $1 or something, or can you help me out with this, and so on. So it always plays out in all different scenarios.
Katie, you're mute. Not sure if you're
Oh yeah, no, I find that so interesting, I think, too. And understanding that it is happening locally too, because I think there is so much development happening in the entire continent of Africa, especially Ghana, that there still are, communities are at different places and people are still very much at different classes and different places in their financial lives, that it is really interesting to see that it does happen so locally too, but that you all have a chance to kind of break those apart as well.
Thank you so much. I would like to, there's, Winter has to go. And I would also like to wrap up. It was really interesting, and I would now transition to the next part, to the assignment, because just as last month, we will also have we will continue the discussion online, and Katie has put together for things for you. We would like to continue after the session.
Yeah, so I think one thing to do, just to make sure, I think you all have a great grasp of this and a lot of prior knowledge, but taking one pity video and one potential video, maybe the ones I sent you, and drawing contrast between the characteristics of the two. So for example, there's a voicelessness in the Charity Water one, but there's agency maybe in one of the Mama Hope ones. Doing that, making a list and then comparing and contrasting them. The next one would be, can you find a media from your region of the world that breaks the pity narrative? Maybe it's for your community or the country where you're from, and share that with your fellows. There's some, I know from Norway that I love, they're actually making fun of kind of the Westerners. It's called Norway Ready Aid. It's so good. So maybe you can find one of those videos and share with your fellows on kind of what that means for you and your community and where you live. And then I think just thinking about furthering kind of things examples I gave you is, in what ways can you work from a place of empathy when you're in Ghana? What does that mean to you? And maybe as, an organization of fellows from across the world. And then I'm going to send you a chapter from a book called The Bright Continent. And it's about Africa as a continent and the way it should be seen at this point for its innovation. And it really, again, kind of breaks down that narrative that we're used to. The author is Nigerian. It's a really exceptional book and an easy read. So if you have a chance to buy it and read the whole thing, that would be great. But I will give you the first chapter after this call that you can read.
Thank you so much, Katie. It was really, really nice to have this presentation and also conversation with you. Thanks for everyone who joined this call. And we will definitely keep the conversation going. And yes.
Great. Feel free to reach out to me personally too if you have any questions about anything that we do at Mama Hope or just the Stop the Pity stuff as well. I'm always happy to chat more.
Thank you for that. Yeah. So thanks everyone for joining today's call. Please help me with a big thank you and goodbye to Katie by unmuting yourselves and shouting out loud your thank you and your goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yay.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
I wish I could see some of your faces. I know some of you, and I didn't get to see your faces. So thank you to all of you.
Thank you.
It's such a pleasure speaking with all of you. Have a great trip to Ghana and have a good time hosting your fellows in Ghana. Oh, hi, Patty.
Hello, and bye. Thank you so much.
Bye. Talk to you all soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Katie.